Welcome. We are live. All right, so today we have special guest, Sam Baltrusis. How are you?
Hey, doing well, Jay. How are you?
I'm not too bad. Currently, like I start every show, I kind of give a little bit of a rundown of where I'm at. Right now, I am in the Maxwell Mansion Hotel in Lake Geneva, Wisconsin, and
Cool.
I am broadcasting live, of course. My co-host, Shane Feek, and our special guest today is Sam Baltrusis. You have written some books, and which I am like loving those books, by the way. Your last one is what I'm looking forward to. You've also had some TV appearances. You've just been so busy in the paranormal field. It's just been kind of crazy. I mean, so why don't we get into it and talk a little bit about how you got started in the paranormal world, so to speak.
Well, so before we get started, so I'm actually reporting from New York City, and I am dog sitting for this week. So I was able to go to the Christchurch Mansion, which is in Staten Island, on Friday with Brian Cano. So still kind of like it was an amazing experience. But how I got
Right.
started, I actually so I was kind of like the kid from The Shining. I had a lot of experiences as a child, and I was so terrified with those experiences that I ended up putting up paranormal blinders. So if I had, say, if I saw a spirit walk by, then I would have, I kind of freaked out. So I went most of my teens and my 20s, and I actually lived in New York City during that time. And I basically was just mortified until I started writing books in 2007. Was when I first started writing books. I was a journalist for 20 years. And I decided to take what I did as a journalist, instead of interviewing people, interviewing ghosts. So,
Oh, all right, yeah.
yeah. And so I started asking questions. So the way I ask questions, yes or no questions with my dowsing rods.
Okay.
So I'll ask, is there someone with us now? And if it crosses, then it means yes. So fortunately, there's no one with us right now.
Okay. Yeah. I
Unfortunately.
can't say that too much from here because I know that there are quite a few here. So they usually attend every show I do. So.
Well, let's talk to your spirits. Okay. Do we have spirits with Jay right now? Yes. Okay. So are you at a hotel?
Yes. I'm in a spirited hotel that was built in 1856.
All right. So I'm getting kind of okay. Are you a man? Yes. There's a gentleman. Is there a female as well? Is there a female? Okay, saying no. Are you a gentleman? I'm picking up kind of like a cranky old man.
Yeah. Yeah. He usually watches the show.
Okay. All right, cranky old man. Hopefully he'll be nice during this.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about your last book. Didn't you say that it was released or it was still getting released?
Well, I mean, so my most recent book was released was Haunted Hotels in New England. My upcoming book called Ghosts of the American Revolution, which I actually wrote at the very beginning of COVID, which was like March 15th, 2020. I turned it into my publisher, so it's going to be released on November 1st of 2021. It was postponed. However, my publisher has been really apologetic. It was put on hold for almost a year. So I'm really excited about that book finally coming out.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I saw that title, and because of the fact that I have ancestral links to the Revolutionary War, actually one of my third or my fourth great grandfather lived in New York. I can't remember actually the village, but yeah, it's just anything about the Civil War and the Revolutionary War I'm all about it. I mean, it's just, so I'm really excited to actually read that book when it does come out. So,
Yeah, the book actually features a lot of New York City as well. Like a lot of people don't realize that New York City actually has a pretty storied past when it comes to the American Revolution. I
Mhm.
also went to Philadelphia. I live in the Boston area. I live in Somerville, Massachusetts, and that whole area, including Cambridge, Massachusetts, is a major player. But I went all over for this book, so I'm
Right.
excited to finally get it out.
Right. Yeah. Like I said, I'm really looking forward to it. So looking back at some of the stuff like you've experienced in the paranormal field, I saw that you had been going to you stay at different hotels, and then do you investigate those hotels, or um, you write about those hotels, or do you like put out something like a journal or a book or something like that, depending on where you're staying, or is that
Well, I mean, I worked at a lot of hotels throughout my career. So I would do the overnight shift at allegedly haunted hotels. I'm doing a podcast that's actually launching this Thursday. It's called Haunted Hotels with Sam Baltrusis. So it's actually a podcast. So
yeah?
I go to some of the most haunted locations, hotels throughout, mainly through New England. But I talk to people who specialize in certain hotels. So it could be someone that focuses on the Stanley Hotel, which I did for the podcast,
Mhm.
or the Hotel Cecil, which is the one that my friend Richard Estep wrote about. So I kind of talked to a lot of people who specialize in different hotels. So and a lot of times I'm actually reporting from those actual hotels.
Okay, nice. Yeah, I'm looking forward to that podcast. I mean,
Yeah.
I saw that you had posted that, and I saw the mini trailer to it. And I thought that was really cool. So basically, you're kind of just busy all the time, huh?
Yeah, I mean, so the Haunted Hotels with Sam Baltrusis is actually part of the My Paranormal Network. And it's
Okay.
a group of 17 podcasts that came together to launch this coming up week. And yeah, so I've been working on that for about a year now. So the fact that it's finally coming out is awesome, especially now that I'm like in New York City.
Right.
I filmed a TV show that's coming out hopefully in early August with Dave Strader. And I also the book is coming out, so I do have a lot of stuff that actually I worked on during the COVID lockdown that's finally coming out.
Okay. Okay. Um, Kind of following a little bit of some of your paranormal stuff. You said that you recently received, what was it, a trunk full of ancestral stuff? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so it turns out that not only am I related to the Putnam family, who were the major accusers during the Salem witch trials, but I'm also related to Lizzie Borden. And so it's a trunk of ancestral things, kind of. I mean, I'm related to Lizzie Borden. So basically, someone gave me a collection of a historian who actually wrote about Lizzie Borden, and she passed away, and it was basically given to me. So it's basically research and books and all sorts of like letters that were about Lizzie Borden, and also like a lot of research that was done by this historian. Her name's Judy Curry, and it somehow ended up in my possession. It was actually given to a friend who felt like that it should have came to me. So she ended up giving it to my friend Christine, and Christine actually gave it to me. And I'm calling it the Lizzie Borden files. I haven't gone through the files completely, but there's a lot of information there.
Right. Now, some of those, just going through, even holding some of that stuff, has just got to give you, like, you could just feel the energy from that whole trunk, probably. Is that true?
Yeah, well, I'm a psychometrist, so if
Okay.
I can actually touch an object and pick up energy from that object. This woman, who I didn't never met her when she was living. She was a French historian, so she actually really focused on other parts of the Lizzie Borden, the Borden murders from 1892, in a really French way. When I say that, she kind of focused on the other players, like Bridget Sullivan, who was the maid at the Lizzie Borden bed and breakfast, like Lizzie Borden's relationship with Nance O'Neill, who many thought may have been her lesbian lover. So, like a lot of people never focused on the other people. And also, there's a woman named Bertha Manchester, and Bertha Manchester was killed by a hatchet around the same time as the Borden murders of 1892. However, Lizzie Borden was actually in prison or was going through the trial. So there's no way that the same person that murdered that Lizzie Borden actually committed the murder of Bertha Manchester. So she really wanted me to, when I say she, having communicated a lot with my cousin Lizzie Borden, she wanted me to focus on Bertha Manchester.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure you could probably write a whole book on that, right?
Yeah. I could. I mean, I have. So the show that I did, it was a shock doc, actually was about the murders, and so we can't talk about it until it's actually announced by the network.
Right.
But I really do go into the backstory of the Borden murders, and also focus on other players that have been overlooked by history, like Eliza Borden. Eliza Borden was actually related not by blood to Lizzie Borden, but she was related through her husband Lodwick Borden, and she actually had what we thought was postpartum depression, and threw her children down a well, and then took her husband's straight razor and cut her neck.
Wow.
Suicide. So she was someone that I really connected with while doing the show that's coming out hopefully in early August.
Okay. Now I have a question. Would you say that ancestral connections, I mean, like people who have had like suicides and like murder and this and that, do you think that there is any type of inherited connection to that emotion? I mean, do you think that they can transcend that down through the lines? I mean, you hear of people who, somebody committed murder, a great uncle or great grandfather, whatever, and then later on it's just kind of like transcends down. Do you think that there's any meat to that? Do you think there's anything connected with that? I mean, spiritually speaking?
Absolutely. I think that if you look at my family line, it's stained with blood. There's blood all the way through my lineage. So it goes down to Innocent Borden. She actually was the child of Thomas Cornell Borden, and she was called innocent because her husband was accused of killing his mother by pushing her into a fireplace. That was Rebecca Briggs Cornell. It all started from Innocent Cornell. So we have multiple people that are connected to Innocent Cornell, including Lizzie Borden. And so my lineage is stained with blood. Do I think that that we are all killers? No, I don't. I think that there's like a genetic predisposition for having. I mean, there's a lot of victims too, so it's not just murderers. And I also think they're all women as well. So I think it's like gender specific, but I do think that there is a curse of some sort on my family. I mean, that's kind of dramatic, but I do think that there's something genetic. And I think that if you talk to other descendants of the Borden family or of Innocent Borden, that a lot of the people that I talk to, a lot of them are investigators, a lot of them are authors, a lot of them are people that kind of like hunters, that we hunt for information, we hunt for clues. My mother, for example, who's the one that uncovered the fact that we're related to the Borden family. So this is a fairly new thing I found out. She wanted to be like a forensic detective her whole life. So I do think that there's something to it.
Right. Yeah. Now, do you feel that when you meet somebody, like say that you've met quite a few people in the paranormal field, do you ever get that feeling like you're connected somehow? Like, I know this person, or I've seen this person, or, it's like, how do I know this person from somewhere? And then come to find out that it's, because of the paranormal, because of the spiritualist type energy. Do you believe that we're connected that way?
I think some of us are. I mean, I think I find it really fascinating when I do an event and someone at the event actually is also related to me through the Borden family. So I'll say like, oh, I'm related to the Putnams and the Bordens. And this actually happened recently with a woman named Laura Brand, who is she's not a paranormal investigator. She's more of a forensic psychologist. she was like, oh, I'm related to them too. So I think that a lot of the people in the paranormal field, some of us are connected on a spiritual level. Some of us aren't connected on a spiritual level. But I do think that when it comes to like my relatives, we kind of congregate together. I don't know how it happens, but it does.
Right. Yeah. I've ran into that a couple different times where it's like I know this person's like that face looks familiar, and then come to find out that somewhere down the line that we were either related or we knew somebody of the family. You know what I mean? So I just think that it's just we're all connected in some way. So I just was curious to see, like when you were talking about Lizzie Borden and how passionate you are talking about your lineage, which I think is great because a lot of people don't realize that, speaking of your ancestry researching is kind of a lost art. I mean, there's so many people who really don't know who their lineage is, and it's just kind of like if people would kind of just stop and take the time to really research that and to find out where they come from, I mean, it's kind of sad to me because I've ran into a couple people like I have no idea who my great grandfather is, or something like that. And it's just like, I just, for some reason, I guess it's just me because of the fact that I love history and I love that whole aspect of researching and going back and finding, different things and different information of your own lineage, and I like helping other people with their own lineage, and helping them find out, did you know this? Did you know that? And, it's just kind of cool that, the way you talk about your lineage, and I just think it's kind of refreshing in that sense that it's just really, it's pretty cool.
Well, I mean, I was one of those people where I didn't know who I was related to. Like my mother's a Hughes, so our connection is Deborah Hughes is her maiden name. So we didn't know we were connected to the Bordens or the Putnams. And I was a researcher in Boston focusing on the Salem witch trials for about 10 years. And the fact that I'm related to the Putnam family is weird, and so I'm passionate about it, but I'm passionate about it in a sense that I feel guilt, extreme guilt, to be connected to these people. So it's not passion like, oh, this is cool. It's I'm connected to some really horrible things, and I want to undo the family curse, if there is a curse, or really find postmortem peace for some of these victims that are my family, and even maybe find peace for the perpetrators. Like if I can find. If I can exonerate Lizzie Borden, I would love to do that because she's my cousin. I would love to, hopefully prove her innocence.
Right. Speaking of curses, what are your total thoughts on that? Curses, hexes, how do you feel about those?
I mean, that's kind of a broad question. I mean, I think that when I say curse, I think that if someone was pressed to death over a 3-day period, they were stripped naked, boards were put on top of them, I think that that's going to leave a psychic imprint on the land. And, I'm talking about Giles Corey, who was one of the victims of the Salem witch trials. He supposedly cursed Salem, and he cursed the sheriff who was putting the tongue back into his mouth while he was trying, getting water. That's gonna, that kind of torture is going to leave a psychic imprint on the land, and also possibly leave a curse. So I think that a curse, maybe that's kind of like it's a loaded word, but I also think that if there's a lot of injustice or injustice that's associated with a specific murder or crime, that could pass down through your lineage. So I think that's the case for the Borden family. I think that there's a lot of unfinished business with Lizzie Borden. And I think that there's unfinished business with Innocent Cornell. There's unfinished business with the Salem witch trials. So I don't know if I would call it a curse or a hex. I would say that it's just, it's unfinished business.
Right. How do you feel about the paranormal teams and groups? Some of them that I have talked to recently are getting more into the scientific side of research, or the investigations. Like my co-host Shane is good at what he does in the scientific side. What did you say? You're 80% scientist and 20% skeptic?
Yeah, other way around. 80% skeptic, 20% believer.
Yeah.
So Yeah, I was going to ask him about what he demonstrated his dowsing rod there. What other tools do you use? I mean, in a typical, investigation or in a research for your books?
Well, I mean, I am a historian first and foremost. So
Sure.
I spend years at a location. I'm an immersion journalist. So I interview hundreds of people for my books.
Wow.
I interview people and they tell me their stories. So do I convey the investigations in my book? Sometimes I do. Like I just went to the Chrysler Mansion. We had multiple tools. I'm old school in my tools. I like dowsing rods. I use the Estes method, which is a Spirit Box 7 in earphones and blindfolds. I like to do that. And I also channel. I mean, I'm a light trance channeler, so I actually used what is called the Holzer method, where you have someone who is going through a channeling, which I'm the one that's able to channel, and the person in the case of like recently was with Dave Strader asked me questions, and he would ask me like he would actually talk to the spirit, and I was using me as a vessel. So when it comes to the tools, I love working with paranormal investigators because it validates with what's in the room. I'm like, there's something in the room. It's a man. He's a cranky old man, kind of like you, Jay. If you have something to be able to back it up, then it just validates what I'm picking up. The people that are like, I'm a scientist. I'm friends with you guys, and I like going on investigations with you guys. But really, is this a science? I mean, is it really a science?
Well, I kind of think so because I mean, quantum mechanics has a very lot to do with the spiritual side. I mean, so yeah.
I mean,
attack it from different angles, basically.
Yeah, for me, I'm a historian, so I mean that's a social science, I guess. Sure. And so I work on getting facts, and I talk to the spirits to get stories, like tell their story. Maybe they weren't in the history books, and they want their story to be told.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, some of the tools that some investigators use are different, to say the least. I basically use a lot of my instincts, my intuition, and a lot about what I hear and about what I feel. And I'll try to use like just a regular recorder. I use a recorder on my phone because I think I catch some great EVPs off my phone because technology today is just kind of crazy. So I mean, I would rather use the recorder on my phone than say use one of the old ones that they always talk about in the paranormal.
Oh,
yeah. That one. You know what I mean? So I mean, it's just different strokes for different folks, I guess. People do things differently, and
for me, I boil it down to numbers, statistics, and sample rates and things and stuff. So just a different breed.
Yeah,
we complement each other.
And when I investigate, I'm like, I communicate, ask yes or no questions, or even sometimes get full sentences, and that to me is interviewing the spirits. So I mean, I'm less interested in getting all the I'm like the whole say ghost hunters methodology. There are people out there that do that, and that's awesome. Like the science people, and I work with those people. But that's not what that's not why I'm in the field. I'm in the field to uncover history and to focus on people who have been marginalized by history, give them a voice. I don't need to prove that ghosts are real. I know that they're real. We've already proven that. Let's get to the good stuff. Let's get to giving them a voice.
Right, the history, and I truly believe in that. I mean, a lot of it when I come into this location here at this hotel. I know the history. I've ran into several different spirits. I've actually helped a couple cross over. I've actually helped ones that haven't even been on this property that have been nearby. So it's kind of like, it's a goal for me to be able to not only help the living, but also help the deceased, but also, like you said, tell their story, because a lot of people aren't hearing that voice. And so you need somebody that's going to have that voice for them. And what you're doing is awesome. I mean, I could just tell by the way that, you're passionate about, speaking to these spirits and to connect with them. Like you said, you're doing the best. I would say the best interview. Interviewing these people and that have been deceased and have all these, stories to tell. And like you said, yeah, people that go out and just to go ghost hunting and to do all that. I get it. I mean, but there's a bigger picture, and I've always looked at it as that there's a bigger picture, and I don't think that it's just ghost hunting is just not even is maybe just a tenth of it. Finding out who's there or whatever, but investigating the research and who that person really was to get down to the crux of who they were and what they did and how they lived. That is something that it's always been a passion for me to be able to help somebody else who doesn't have a voice. You know what I mean?
Well, I just went, for example, I went to the Chrysler Mansion, which is a very haunted location in Staten Island. The person that was leading the investigation, it was a public event. It was Brian Cano, who is an amazing investigator, actually. And it was so frustrating to work with him in the sense that he was so by the book methodology. It's like, okay, put your phone on airplane mode, and if you get a response, it may be like we have a secret word where we ask it to say like bourbon. If it's actually a spirit, say bourbon. And I like the methodology, but I'm kind of advanced, and I think it's great for everyone to learn the basics and turn off your phone while you're doing an investigation. This could be a false positive. Contamination. So that's great for the beginners, but also, I'm super advanced when it comes to that. And I get a little frustrated when you go on an investigation with a group of people who are it's about the science. And I'm like, there's a science to it, but that's not my thing.
Right. And having said that, there's a lot of people that I know that do that try to, go by the book, or try to, granted, there are people that have to be educated. There are people who are in this business and just looking for a thrill or looking for whatever. And there's so much more to it than that. And I just think that having to encompass some of these other things all together, it can work, and it does. And I've seen it work a couple different times, but, I have a bunch of equipment that I don't even use anymore because I really didn't need it, and
for me, I don't have any abilities whatsoever. I can walk right through whatever and nothing's there. So basically, if I can't get some kind of, other method, for me, I'm just walking around in an empty space. So
right. And that's the thing too. A lot of times you have the skeptics who are pure scientists. This means that you're not sensitive,
Correct. And I know for sure I'm not. So
and which is great. So work with somebody who is, and you'll find where the ghosts are.
That's why Jay is there.
Yeah, that's why I'm here.
We're supposed to be the yin and yang. I'm the science. He's the spirit. So
Yep. So, and then hopefully, soon I'm going to get him here to do an investigation. And he's going to bring his equipment, his scientific equipment, and we're basically going to test a couple different theories with that, with me being a medium and me having known what is here and whatnot, and see how it all, kind of meshes together. Like you said, different angles coming from different sides. So I wanted to ask you, what was the most haunted place or hotel, I should say, that you stayed at?
Well, for me, if you know my whole backstory, I worked at multiple hotels. So I'm a big believer, instead of some people, they spend one night at a location and they think that, it's the most haunted. Well, for me, I spend months or years at a location before I decide it's the most haunted. So for me, the most haunted experience actually was at a hotel in Salem, Massachusetts, where I was working the overnight shift and I'm not going to name the hotel because they don't want to be known as haunted. And so I was working at the hotel in Salem. There was a black mass that appeared like right by the elevator. The black mass goes into the elevator, goes down to the basement floor, and it turns out that it manifested into a shadow figure. So for me, like that was the most terrifying experience that I've had at a hotel.
Oh wow. Yeah, that would probably be a little bit unnerving, I would say. But have you ever been to a hotel where you just, or that even that you worked at, or even just visited for a while, or whatever, that just people say was haunted, or whatever, and just wasn't?
Well, I mean, a good example is the Stanley Hotel. I mean, that hotel is haunted, but I definitely I didn't have like an overly profound experience at the Stanley Hotel. That's in Estes Park, Colorado. Everyone said it's like the most haunted hotel in the country. I loved it. The only thing I really had experience that I had is I got elevation sickness. You know, like I was I was woozy from the elevation, and. I mean, do I think it's very historic? Can you feel the energy when you walk into the hotel? Absolutely.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
But I don't think it's anything negative. I think if it's haunted, it's haunted by good spirits. It's not like The Shining that I always thought it was.
Right. Yeah, I've been at the Stanley twice, and I've had a couple different, like energy fluctuations within myself. I mean, because like you said, you can feel the energy when you walk in that place. That place is beautiful and fantastic. But yeah, I kind of agree with you in that sense. I don't think it's kind of like here. I know spirits are here. There's been some active things here, but I wouldn't say that it's like off the charts. You know what I mean? It's like you said, good spirits or whatever. Because the fact that it's just, like the Stanley, it was great to visit. I love it. I lived in Colorado for a couple of years, so I really liked that place. But would I say that it's like the most haunted? No, I wouldn't. I mean,
also you'll find, like, this goes for the Lizzie Borden Bed and Breakfast in Fall River too. When you have a location that is investigated over and over and over again, all those investigators come in, they bring their baggage with them. Like the Lizzie Borden Bed and Breakfast, if you investigated it, say 20 years ago, you would have a very different experience than I did the last time I investigated, which was pretty recently. And so I think that you have to consider, not only is it like I call them OGs or original ghosts, but there's also people's baggage that they leave at the location that is still lingering at the location. So
concept.
That was my next question.
Really,
Yeah.
Interesting concept of, people bringing them with them. I mean, who knows? They may have had something attached when they showed up, and it just decided to check in and stay for a while.
Yeah, I mean, and that's a lot of it. I think it's like over contamination with some of these places.
They probably get bored after a while. I mean, you get hundreds of investigators, a month coming through there. They're getting tired of talking to these people.
Right. I mean, it's just, yeah.
I've seen people use like spirit boards for the Lizzie Borden all the time, and like that is kind of. I mean, I don't use spirit boards, and I think spirit boards is allowing bad negative energy to come into the room.
I would
agree.
agree.
Opening a portal to whatever's there.
Yeah,
and you see that across the board. So like some of the most haunted locations, that's the case. I mean, like that, like it's where it's investigated so often. It's almost encouraged to have, negative energy, and it opens the portal. I'm a big believer that things can be interdimensional. So like the shadow people at a location, especially in like Salem, Massachusetts, or at the Lizzie Borden Bed and Breakfast, that's because of all the activity, like all the things like using spirit boards, or in Salem, it's so this necromancy, which is where you like raise the dead, and you have like weekend witches coming in Salem, like doing like, whatever they're doing to like conjure God knows what. Yeah. And of course I'm going to see a shadow person in the window at the hotel, because they did a conjuring ritual, a week before that. So who knows what people are actually summoning when they do the like spell work or ritual or God knows what.
Right.
So do you investigate with the lights on or off, or do you care? Do they care?
I rather do. I mean, I'm chicken. I mean, I really am. But I'll tell you, like when I was at the Chrysler Mansion, and we actually, there's a whole back area, like a wooded area that has reports of like a shadow person, and I was actually brave, and like I was terrified, but but I tend to like the lights on because I want to be able to see what's going on.
Yeah,
You know,
we do. We figure, well, I mean, if they're spirits and they were alive at one time, they probably didn't just hang out in the dark. Plus, if there's these shadow people everybody talks about, it's like, well, if it's dark, you're not going to see them. So, I mean, it kind of makes sense.
I think that the diehard investigators like, oh, turn off the lights. I'm like, what?
Yeah.
Like, what are you going to see in the dark? You know, and I'm
Their
clairvoyant.
lights are brighter and flashier in the night.
Yeah,
Dark.
and I mean, I'm clairvoyant, so I see dead people. I can't see them in the dark. You know, I can see them in the light.
Right.
There you go.
Yeah.
Fair
Yeah.
enough.
Yeah, I personally don't have any either or. I mean, yeah, I think it looks good on TV, but I think that's probably, you know,
Gotta do something with
just-
the expensive equipment.
right? Yeah. But yeah, so I just, what do you feel about all the TV shows in the past 10 years? How do you feel about what it's become?
I mean, I'm a producer, so I also, not only am I on TV shows, but I also produce TV shows. I think that there is a lot of good that's on TV. I think there's a lot of not so good on TV as well. And people that are like so quick to like, oh, you know, people want fame or they want to be on television. People that are on television are actually really good investigators. And I've worked with a lot of them. And they worked their way. They weren't given that, you know, like that role to investigate in the show. But I also think that you know, if you're watching the paranormal TV shows for actual like learning how to be an investigator, I would turn the channel. It's not a how to and how to investigate. Maybe Ghost Hunters, but that's about it. I have said this before, and I've been slammed by sort of by some within the community that I strongly believe that that the TV shows are entertainment. I do think that they can serve as a way to educate people about the history of a location. And like the show that gets the biggest like negative press is probably like Ghost Adventures. And I actually think that the paranormal research, which is the history that they talk about, is actually really good. My friend Jeff Belanger actually is the researcher or the writer for that show. And some of his paranormal history research is the best in the business. So, you know, do I agree with Zach Bagans' paranormal techniques? No, I don't. And I think provoking the spirits is not a good
aggressive, yeah.
Yeah, it's not a good idea. But I also think that Zach has definitely lightened up over the years. When he first started, he was like provoking things and trying to cause things to happen. I think that you'll see a nicer Zach Bagans out in the field, you know? And I mean, what do you guys think? Do you think that the shows are all like horrible, or what do you think?
Go ahead, Jay.
No, I don't necessarily think that they're horrible. I kind of wanted to see, you know, I'd like to see more research. I'd like to see more storyline of what is being investigated. You know what I mean? I kind of would like to see more of the, not so much less investigation, but more of detailed, actually, from the history of it, you know, and what happens recently, and you know, all the way down the line. I mean, you could go from one spot in history, and then some of them can just jump completely and skip probably 30, 40 years when you don't know what happened in between. You know, maybe some of that would be important in that sense. You know what I mean? So I don't think that the shows now are terrible, but I
have a little different view. But go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. I mean, like, to kind of add to that, I think that you'll find, Jay, that the sort of the online streaming shows. I'm part of a show called it's called The Dark Zone, and it spends like 3 days at a haunted location, like the Lizzie Borden bed and breakfast. They're doing the Conjuring House again. They've done it before. It actually goes into all the different layers of a haunting. And they do a lot of research, and I love it because it's like basically a week long, or in the case of this coming up, it's 3 days long, where you talk to multiple experts. You get to all the different layers of the haunting. For an hour-long TV show, it's actually 42 minutes. There's no way to be able to go through all the history of the location. But anyway, okay, sorry to interrupt you.
No, that's all good. So I guess for me, it seems like, and because of the entertainment factor, people that are watching don't really get a feel for what it's really like. I mean, you might sit out there for 15 hours and have a couple little blips or a couple little things, and I know they got to make a show and they got to produce it and it's got to, get an audience, but it's like, as much as you see this happening on there does not typically happen. And I mean, at least in the, 20, 30 investigations I've done, it's just, it seems like they're getting a false sense of, all these things are going to happen and there's going to be these big dramatic things and all this stuff. And then, you're out there for hours and hours and hours and you got, numbers and videos and things and stuff. And, it seems like a little unrealistic to me, but maybe it's just our style of investigation. Maybe it's because, I'm not in film.
Well, I mean, you'll see the TV shows, having been on multiple TV shows, we film for days. I mean, like, it's not an hour-long filming session. So what they do is they just they do the highlights reel of the multiple day investigation.
Understood,
So I mean, it like, having actually been on a show that was an investigation, it was like a typical investigation where 99% of it was, like, sitting around like sitting there and twiddling your thumbs and like, what's going on? Nothing's going on, and laughing and and eating chips and like all the things that you do when you're on investigation.
Sure.
I mean, I think I mean, I get your point, but I also think that people are smart enough to know that you don't watch Ghost Adventures to learn how to investigate. You actually go on an investigation, and
I just know that it's what gets a lot of people started. Hey, I'm going to start a group because I saw this cool show. And then they go out and they start it and they last for about 2 months. And then they either fold or they give up or they're, this is a bunch of BS, and then it gets kind of a bad name on the whole paranormal world because they think they can do this great thing right off the, get-go.
But the biggest problem you see, especially with like the younger generation, they actually want to be on TV. They don't see it on TV. They're like, oh, I want to be on television. I want to have my own show, and that's their motivation. And truthfully, guys, if that's your motivation, you will never end up on television. If your motivation is fame or being on TV, then you will never end up on TV. It's just like the people that I know that are actually on television never wanted to be on television. Their passion was
that's me.
The investigating. Their passion was the history. Their passion was I can't stand being on television, but I'm on television a lot because I'm good, and so guys, if you're watching this and you like want to start a group to be on television, don't do it. Do it for the right reasons.
Sure,
right. Oh, and I totally
had
agree.
some, television people kind of contact me and ask me about some of that stuff, but then it's like, all right, well, I mean, what I do is probably boring enough that it's not going to fit on your show. I mean, are you going to really want to sit there and look at some numbers and play with some math and do some stuff, And they're kind of like, I don't know. And so it just seemed to me like it's very difficult to get it to work out right. I don't know.
Right. No, I think that a lot of it today is, for the most part, is people who are just even getting into the paranormal field and this and that, or just discovering it for the first time. They see that the lure of the excitement factor it does have, and that, I would like to do this or I'd like to do that. It takes probably a while for some of these people to actually realize, hey, there's a whole gamut of stuff that goes into this. It's just not showing up at a location and getting your recorder out and waiting for something to happen. A lot of people don't really understand that, and that's why part of the reasons why I do this show is because of the fact that I want to help educate people so that they know stuff like this, and know, like Sam, like how you investigate or how you research. I mean, I want people to know that there's so many different angles in this paranormal field that it's not just, hey, I'm going to show up, I'm going to find evidence, I'm going to put it on YouTube, and I'm going to be famous. It doesn't work that way. I mean, if it actually worked that way, then, we'd be all rich, but it doesn't. It's just...
My biggest concern, guys, like with the younger generation that's not educated, they're the ones that get the attachments. They're the ones that have like they create a mess at a location, like they do something that upsets the owner, where the owner closes the location for people like us, that are actually respectful to the spirits. So to me, like the younger generation, if I don't want to sound like an old cranky man, like don't do it, but seriously, like if you're not in it, if you're in it for the wrong reasons, the spirits will like, it won't work out for you. So whether they attach themselves to you or whatever, you have to come in with a pure heart and pure intentions.
It's all about intentions.
And then maybe they will reach out to you. Who knows? Like, because they can be stubborn like people. Like they may not want to talk to you. They're like, why would I talk to you? Like, Sam, I don't like you. Like, why would I talk to you?
Yeah. I mean, it's just, and it's just. I think people need to really, educate themselves, especially in this field. It's this paranormal field is so big that it needs more people like you, Sam, or even like another podcaster, like David Taylor. I mean, I've really enjoyed, talking with him. I mean, there's just a lot of different things that people can do, to educate themselves on this. And I just think that part of that is, the whole TV deal with everybody, wanting to watch like, Ghost Adventures or whatever. And don't get me wrong, I like those guys from Ghost Adventures. Like you said, I didn't always agree with the way Zach investigated, but he has toned it down and things are different. You know what I mean? But I'd rather educate people and help people, discover a location and learn the true history about a location and what's there, and then just show up and, hey, we're going to investigate, and then a couple hours later, yeah, that was fun, when the whole time nothing happened or it was boring. And that's what they were hoping for. You know what I mean? So when they take these people into these big, huge insane asylums, and a large people, which having a lot of people traipse through these insane asylums and this and that, and the energy there is so vast and so different. It's like getting a bunch of people in an auditorium that have totally different personalities and mix it in one spot, and you're going to get totally different things. Yeah. And and that's where some of these kids can probably get attachments or whatever and this and that. I mean, because the fact that your intention is to be scared, or to have a thrill or whatever. I'm not saying that everybody's like that, but there are people out there like that. That's just what they want to do, and those probably are the people that are going to get attachments.
See, and I just like 2 or 3 investigators and equipment. Keep it very small.
Very small.
You don't have all the contamination. You don't have all the noise and all the thoughts and the people and the stuff. So.
Right.
And part of me, like, for example, like when I investigate, I turn that into a book. But it's like I feel like, what are you guys' thoughts on, like, when you have such a small group and say you do get amazing evidence, do you share that with other people? Or is it just for you?
Wow.
Right. No, I'd share it to whoever would want to know, so that they could have that.
Usually I would have it like peer reviewed by my other peeps. And then if they're like, yeah, that is something, and we've ruled out the 20 things it couldn't be, and we got something, yeah, I'll share that with a small paranormal community. But right. I don't typically throw all the evidence just, because we get random things all the time, and you're looking at statistics and stuff, and, most of the stuff we find it debunked pretty quickly. It's like, okay, it was this thing that made that noise, or it was that thing that did this. And we find them really quick. We got a lot of really advanced equipment. But occasionally we do get things that are statistically significant that do not have an explanation that was apparent at the time. And, those do get shared in our small group of paranormal friends. I mean, I don't really push it out to the public, because I don't always know if it's good enough evidence in my own mind to bother other people with,
Right.
So, I mean, for me, like if I was a ghost and I was trying to like manifest and communicate with people that were investigating, I would get frustrated if I communicated with paranormal investigators and they didn't tell my story,
And I understand that.
And so that's kind of my frustration too with that. With not to say that I'm frustrated with the paranormal investigators, and I support you guys and I love working with you guys, but I also think that that it's so important to we're kind of beyond the proving part.
Right.
Now let's tell their stories, and I think people get so caught up in the science of it and the like debunking, and you should have that background, but then you need to go to the next level where you're actually like telling their stories or trying to get information, like finding victims who, for example, some of them may have been murdered and their remains, we can't find them, like using your ability as a paranormal investigator to maybe solve a cold case or something. I just hope that we could do more as a community to give a voice to those without a voice.
And I think that's a lot of it has to do with educating people too, letting them know that there are different levels to this investigating. It's not just investigating, I mean, so it's just basically kind of like you're an on-site journalist. I mean, you're basically trying to capture the story. You're trying to basically, get that story out so people know, and this and that. I mean,
and from my point of view, it's hard to capture a story when there's not really communication. I mean, like you guys, you hear the thing talk, you hear the voice, you get the feelings, you get the thing. I get, okay, we asked a question, and exactly within this time frame, I got statistical anomalies in these sections. Okay, so and we do it 2 or 3 times. Yep, they're doing it. So somebody's responding, but do you get what they're talking about? Maybe not.
Right.
And so it's not a story more. It's more of, okay, things exist that we can't, that we can't find a reason for.
Well, for example, like we did an EVP session, like a burst session at the Chrysler Mansion, and there was all definite whispering and talking on the recorder. Okay, so we're playing it all around. What I find so funny is people's interpretations of those EVPs. Like one person's like, it's like, oh, he said, I was murdered, and another person said, oh no, he's like, I'm hungry. It was.
So that's why we've been using the computers, and I mean, because computers don't have bias. The thing records the data, and you get the numbers, and you run the math, and it gives you something or it don't. And so, because of the fact that nobody can agree with the EVPs say and stuff, it's kind of like, throw those out. We're out of the way, So I don't know. It's just a different method, I guess.
Right. But that whole thing with the finding out what the EVP said, I mean, I've ran into that a couple different times where I had an investigation and completely different
studies with that, where we've actually, people have written papers where they send it out to 200 college students. What did this thing say? They take the numbers and they do the thing and say, okay. And it's almost chaos. It's like they don't know if anybody really agrees. So I don't know.
Right. So you kind of got to take that with a grain of salt,
Sure.
Unless the person or the spirit is like right in your ear and you hear clear as day.
I would like them to do that.
It's not always what it cracks up to be.
Because they'll be like, hey, a sensitive will say, yeah, there was something strange in this basement. It was in this corner. It was down there. That's the first place I'm taking my boards and all my equipment. And I'm like, all right, I'm here.
Right.
What's happening?
And that's eventually what me and Shane are going to do. Sam.
Yeah, we're going to actually have him guide, and I'm going to and we're going to tag team.
Yeah.
I mean, guys, I think that is the best way to do it. Like people like me, I mean, the thing is, it's not that I believe everything. I'm actually kind of a skeptic, but I'm really big about, and when I say skeptic, I'm kind of like skeptical. Like people will show me photos and they're like, hey, do you see something in those photos? I'm like, no, I don't see anything in those photos.
No.
It's like, I'm sorry, I don't. So I guess what I'm saying is like, it's rare for me to go, oh, there's spirit communication. I do think spirits are everywhere, but I also think that spirits, like they kind of pick and choose who they want to communicate with. Yeah. And so I think, and also too, they may get frustrated like by like communicating with like a location like the Lizzie Borden bed and breakfast or like the Stanley Hotel that's investigated so often. The spirits may be like kind of tired and like gonna pick on people and pretend to be a demon or something, just because they're so angry, they're like, oh, like stop asking me like the questions that people ask the same questions like like, is there anybody here? Is there anybody here? And they're like, can you come up with a more creative question?
Right.
Yeah, understood. Yeah,
Like
we try to come up with creative ones. We've even done strange things like write simple words, 5-6 letter words or less on flashcards and have them help say, hey, can you guys say these words, and then hold up the flashcard. And of course we're recording all this. So see if we can get them to do stuff, all kinds of little, a lot of stuff from psychology, a lot of stuff from parapsychology,
here's what
outside the box tactics to get.
here's what Dave Taylor said to that.
Sure.
What's your favorite color? And like someone always asks that question though. I mean, like it's always like, what's your favorite color? And then they'll go blue, and and you're like, oh, did it say blue? And then someone will say, no, it said blood.
Right.
Like, come on.
Right. So there's so many different ones that are just like, yeah, you got to get more creative, and I see that, are you here or this or that. When I come on this location, I automatically know they're here, so I basically just.
I don't know that, so I'm like, okay,
yeah.
I could be just.
So I just basically, I thank them for allowing me to be here, and thank them for, this or that and everything, and then talk to them while I'm setting everything up, just because of the fact that I want to be able to interact. But I also want them to know that my intention is pure, and that I'm here to do a show, and I'm here to do this. I'm not here to create anything nefarious, or anything like that. You know what I mean? So I just have always had that connection. So, and that just goes with everywhere. I mean, I know they're all around, but.
See, I'll do the basic protections, and I'll do the basic, don't follow me home kind of thing, or that kind of stuff, mainly because I can't sense them. So if something's attached, I won't know it. So,
Yeah.
So I do that stuff out of precaution for my own self. But, for the most part, every space I go into is new or different. I mean, it's like, okay, am I talking to an empty air, or is there something actually here? And until I can get some kind of instrument readings, I don't have any idea. So it's just a different world, I guess.
Right.
What are your thoughts, Sam?
Yeah.
What was the question? Sorry.
I just said, what were your thoughts on the, how does somebody that's not an empath or a psychic or medium or whatnot determine a place is worth investigating or haunted or whatnot? I mean, unless you can get some instrument readings, there's no way you could talk, and you could spend days in a place that has nothing.
I mean, I really think that you should go to a place that calls to you. I mean, I mean, if you're not intuitive, I guess you're like, what do you mean, Sam? But I mean, like, does a place interest you? Like, the history interests you, or you like the architecture, or I just go to places that really kind of call to me, and I think you'll find that you'll have more interaction at those locations as opposed to a place that doesn't interest you at all. I've been to locations that don't interest me at all, and usually it's like the locations, like residential cases that I've done in the past, where I don't think that there's anything bad at the location. It may just be like lingering energy. I think I tend to stay away from residential cases because of that, because I do think that that for the most part, like I'd rather go to like a historic location, because that interests me as a clairvoyant and as a historian.
Sure.
Yeah, the residential ones are.
The last question is, everybody talks about history, and everybody's talking about, okay, 100-year-old, 200-year-old ghosts, So do you guys ever encounter one that's, a week old? Somebody just, somebody just passed away in a building, or, does that happen, or does it take is there like the spawn time that they have to cook for a while before they can become?
No, to me, it's a transitional period.
Okay.
And it could take.
Because everybody only ever talks about ancient ghosts. They don't ever talk about, somebody that died a month ago.
I mean, let me give you a perfect example. I was at the Chrysler Mansion. There was someone that was murdered. He was a mafioso in 2005. That's fairly recent. I was communicating with him so. I mean, it's been 16 years, but but I also think that he's got unfinished business. And I also think that the longer you wait, the less strong it is, unless it's been like Lizzie Borden is still wicked strong, as we say here in New England, because she's questioned and interrogated over and over and over again in the afterlife. So some of these people that are like Lizzie Borden, who's 1892 was when the murders happened, and the early early 1900s was when she passed. I mean, she's going to stick around until people stop asking her questions.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, and I always felt that way too. I mean, it's just, I said this before, and I'm like, man, Lizzie's just really gonna be pissed by now, you know?
Oh, she is. Oh my gosh, guys, she is so upset. She's like, stop it, like no more, no more,
no more questions, right?
Kind of, yeah.
I mean, it's just crazy how some of these people just think that, you know, the spirits on the other side, you know, they're probably just, they're not
in their head.
Yeah, they're just.
But okay, so I'll give it. But I know we're getting close to the end of the show. But I did an EVP, and the producers were like, "Sam, ask if Lizzie Borden killed her stepmother or father." Okay, so I asked that question. She's been asked that question 1,000 times. I'm like, well, this is my cousin. I don't want to ask that question, but I did. So I asked the question, and on the EVP, I hear a blood curdling scream like, stop it, like stop asking me that question, you know? And I'm like, when we're asking these questions, we're not only are we we're traumatizing them in the afterlife. She wants me to find who actually murdered her family, not did you kill your stepmother? And she's tired of being asked that question.
Sure.
Right. Yeah. I just think that it's just crazy how to really, if you actually think about, you know, what some of these spirits actually experience, you know, after having all these investigators traipse through in your house, which number one, it's not your house. You know, I mean, it's like having strangers come in your house and ask you crazy questions, and you're like, who are these people? You know, so yeah. But
all right.
Well, I think we're out of time. But Sam, you have been an awesome guest.
Yes, it's been great.
Yeah, it's really. And I really love the fact that your insight on a lot of things, and I am really happy that, you know, to talk about the research and the investigation, researching, you know, the history of stuff is what really is fascinating for me, and to hear you talk about it in such length like that is very, very humbling, and I really think that that's just awesome. You know, we need more people like you, Sam.
And one word, and it's respect. When you guys go into these locations, respect the spirits, and they will respect you back. So go in with a pure heart and respect the spirits, because they were people too at one point.
Yeah,
understood.
Yeah, that's basically it. So, okay, after said that, then our time is up. So thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, Shane. Thank you, Sam. And we will see you next week.
Bye.